You know those communications people in your organization, right? You know who they are. They're the ones who are always talking. They're the ones who are always talking about messaging, the messages you want to get out, and sometimes the messages you want to stay in. And in my career as a communications person, I've come to find out a secret. And I think here today with you, it's a good time to share the secret. You don't have to have communications in your title. You don't have to be the chief communications officer or the communications director or the communications associate or be in that division to be a communicator. In fact, each of you, each of us is a communicator. If the enterprise has tens of thousands of people globally, or if the family just has a few around the table, we all are communications people. And so today, while we talk and while we visit, I'd like to deputize each of you to think of yourselves as a communications person. And today, as we speak about communications, about the art and the science that go into it, I'd like us to think very hard about the need to retool and why today is a very good time in human history for communications people. That's me, that's you, to rethink the way we communicate. Because communications people anywhere, whether they're at the corporate level, whether they're activists, whether they're doing something for the good of a country, a people, or a good of a community, they're the culture makers. And right now there's a debate going on around the world. Who are we as a culture? What is the culture that we as a people and throughout history want to leave for our grandchildren and for the next generations? Well, communications people, it's time that we take stock of what we're doing and how we're doing it. That is an honest moment for me as a professional who has the title in my business card, but I hope it's a chance for us to think about how we all do it as people. Now, communications people love to talk about the fact that everything has changed. It's in our DNA, it's in what we love to post and what we love to publish. We love the fact that we live in an era where it seems like everything is new. There are new rules. There are people talking about new power. There are people talking about the way that transportation, technology, the way that ideas are changing everything in the world around us. We love to talk about the fact that everything has changed. But are we ready for the question about what hasn't? Well, let me tell you a story about how indeed some things have changed. I'm going to tell you a story about this thing. This was my television set growing up in Pasadena, California. Oh, I loved this thing. And on Saturday mornings, and I can tell that many of you probably recognize a machine like this, but on my Saturday mornings, I was able to go up in front of this machine, the seemingly magical thing, and I had 13 choices of things that could happen unto me. That dial represented 13 things that could happen, 13 potential moments that could happen to me. Now, I don't need to tell you what, not that many years later, happens when I bring home a television to my house that looks like this. What is it that my young daughter, barely over 2 years old, does when I take this machine out of the box in my living room? She walks up to it, and she goes like this. She swipes that machine instinctively. I didn't give her a lesson. It didn't come with the instructions. But my daughter, she was swiping that machine, and she wasn't looking for 13 things to happen to her. She was looking at infinite possibilities around the world, and she was going to direct technology to do something to feed her internationally at a global level. You could almost see this happening. What a change, because things have changed, and technology for a communicator means that our palette is so much bigger. The spectrum that we can use in terms of tools and tactics has gotten that much more exciting. So technology has changed how we communicate as people. It means that we live in an era where our reality includes virtual reality. The intelligentsia today are talking about artificial intelligence. Our palette is amazing today as technology grows and allows us as communicators to grow our art and our science. There's exciting things to be had when you realize that these people, young people, spend, according to a study that came out in 2013, 22 hours a day within reach of their mobile phone. So for a communicator, that's exciting. 22 hours a day, someone is within reach of a mechanism that I as a communicator can use to push out, or to engage. But as I say this to you, I'm sure you're seeing that there is a downside. That means that for 22 hours a day, this person is linked or maybe locked to something. That is making it exciting for me as a communicator. It's making this person more connected. Is it making this person more human? Because a similar study that came out later revealed that 80% of people in their bed, we will now talk about what happens in their bed, 80% of people, when they wake up in the morning, grab that mobile phone first thing. The first thing they do. Is that you? Are we becoming a people today where even before we stretch, we stream? Even before in the morning when we wake, before we pray, we post? Is it happening that in our beds, before we touch, we text? Connectivity is amazing from a communication standpoint. It's making us more connected. Is it making us more human? These are the questions that as a communicator and someone who's thrilled by the chance to talk about what's brighter, better, and more exciting. The taller the building, the more exciting the message. We as communications people love to discuss those skylines that look only toward the future. In just a few years, the world, in fact, will convene in this city. In 2020, the world will come together in Dubai. And indeed, the conversation there will be about the future. Communicators like me will be drawn to those examples of what's bringing us together through technology, what's around the corner. That's great, but it's a very good time to ask very hard questions about what we communicate. Because in a world of social media, where a majority of people now have access to the internet, and where a majority of those people use social media every day, what we communicate is determining our culture. Or do we have a chance to take that back and set the rules so that we're sharing a culture that matters to us? Technology is a wonderful metaphor. It's a beautiful messenger, but it's human beings that make up the message. In fact, maybe it's time in this era of connectivity, in an era where technology, the digital era, maybe that's the best time for us to be asking the questions, maybe we've got it wrong. Maybe the communications people, in focusing so much on what's new, on what's now, and what's next, maybe we need someone to remind us that we also need to be looking back. I'm going to share with you 3 stories, 3 examples of 3 things that I consider masterworks that have humbled me recently, that have taught me how I as a communicator need to do better. And perhaps that we, since we're all communicators, need to be looking a little bit back and a little bit more beyond. I'm going to share with you the story about how a tomb and a painting and a doodle reminded me that I need to ask hard questions about what I'm doing as a communicator in the digital era. A tomb taught me how to look back. A tomb here in this beautiful country of India. I'll never forget the chance that I had to first visit Humayun's tomb in Delhi. A UNESCO World Heritage Site. I passed through the 2 archways that lead you up to the tomb, and I was with a friend. And as we came into that site and saw the beautiful work that had been recently renovated through a partnership involving the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, the U.S. Ambassador's Fund for Preservation, and of course, the local officials in the city of Delhi. As we walked up into this beautiful site, the person with me said, "Now who built that again?" And we talked about the fact that it was built by a loving wife in memory of her husband, the Emperor Humayun. "Wow," he said. "She had something to say." And indeed, cultural patrimony, things like this, things 450 years old that are all around us. And in this beautiful culture, this rich culture where there's examples on every corner, a tomb has a message for us in an era of terabytes. Because a tomb helps remind us about what hasn't changed. Devotion, love, faith, and indeed the partnerships that happen around these cultural icons, these monuments. The partnerships that are built around them tell us stories about what's happening today, about how people of multiple faiths, multiple backgrounds, different origins can come together in partnership to preserve something, whether or not it reflects their background. And tombs or monuments, these cultural icons, will help remind us where we've come from. We live in an era where we can talk about a tomb today better, with more technology, with more facility than ever before. Are we as communicators looking back so that we can talk about where we want to go? A painting helped remind me that we need to look beyond. You'll notice that the tomb, the painting, and indeed the doodle, these are not things that you turn on or off. They don't have a switch. They're not Bluetooth enabled. But a painting reminded me that in the digital era, we as communicators have a responsibility. The painting that taught me about this lives in the beautiful Domaine de Chantilly in France, just about an hour or so outside of Paris. And inside the chateau, this beautiful, beautiful place, inside of an important collection, in fact, one of the most important collections in all of France, is a painting that was the subject of an exhibition just a few months ago. I went to the exhibition hoping that it would teach me about France, hoping that I would learn more about the artist and appreciate more about this collection. But I left fundamentally changed as a communications professional because of the painting that was at the heart of the exhibition. The exhibition was all about the massacre of the innocents. This is that gut-wrenching moment when, for those of you who remember from the Bible, King Herod ordered the extermination of many children under the age of 2. Now, this is a theme that is oftentimes used by artists, and indeed during the Baroque period, many artists used this theme. Many artists throughout history have followed with it. This particular work is by Nicolas Poussin, and this masterwork from the Baroque has within it incredible amounts of emotion. In fact, the curators of the exhibit help direct you to that emotion in a very smart way. And the ads in the Paris Metro leading up to the exhibition featured this part of the painting, probably the most harrowing part of the painting, where you see the grief and the anguish on the face of this person. I asked myself, why would they use this in publicizing the exhibition? I'm going to go learn about an artist. I'm going to go learn about Poussin. I'm going to go learn about the massacre of the innocents. Well, indeed, by the time I left this exhibition, the curators were helping me ask questions connecting this subject matter to the subject matter of today, to the plight of refugees around the world, to how the thematic of the massacre of the innocents and how artists around the world, indeed photographers, indeed people who are chronicling what's going on around us, or those modern or contemporary artists who are asking questions, are looking beyond the canvas to help us ask questions about our current day. They're reminding us that things that might have seemed unfathomable back then are happening yet today. So I, in an exhibition about painting, came out thinking about the millions of people around the world who are forced to leave their home. Walking into an exhibition, trying to learn something more about art and appreciate art history, I left wanting to make sure that my voice was heard about the young people who make up over half of the refugees today. What a powerful communications lesson that had nothing to do about something to click or something to share. But indeed, it changed me in the way I think about what we're communicating today, about how we need to look beyond. We live in a high-tech world, and yet there are low-tech examples that are high impact. Are we as communications people, you as your own broadcast network, with your own following and audience and influence, are you looking at the cultural patrimony, the history, and making those connections about what's happening today in your health, the education of your community, and the well-being of our society? I had to ask myself, am I doing enough? Or as I am a communicator, so wrapped up in the tech that I'm forgetting to think about the issues. The final example of this low-tech example of something that taught me something important about communication happened in this very city, happened in Bangalore the first time I was here. What a dynamic place. A place where technology is alive and you live it, and where culture and heritage is alive and you live it. Well, the first time I came to Bangalore, I arrived on a Sunday, and I had the opportunity to go to church. Oh, I thought I had the address right. I thought I understood Bangalore traffic, which I will never understand. And I found myself in the church an entire hour early. Now, this could be historic in my own family because I don't think anyone in our family has ever been early to church. But I was there an hour early, and the only other people in the church building were a family of 3, a mother, a father, and a small girl. Well, I'm an extrovert. I like to meet people. I like to talk, and I was in India, so I was very excited to connect with these people. But there was no language in common between us. I did not speak the language that the family spoke. They did not speak any English. And so there we were for an hour, a family of 3 and a lot of me in one room. Well, something happened. A very smart mother employed what you might have heard of. It's called the doodle. And it's not the doodle you're thinking of. It's this one. Taking out a small piece of paper that I carry with me in my wallet every day, I received a masterclass in communication from a young girl that lives somewhere in this beautiful country, who was in Bangalore for the first time and found herself caught, trapped in a room with me until church started. Well, let me tell you what the girl did. She would walk over, and with her mother, she would draw something on this piece of paper, one element, let's say the house. And then she would walk over to me. She would show me the house, and then she would point to her heart. It was important for her that that happened at every turn. And then she'd walk back with her mother, and she'd help her draw the tree, or maybe the road with the cars on it. And then she'd come over to me, and she'd point to her heart. She would almost make a motion that was like a hug. And she'd go back to her mother. It was important for her that in between each of these moments of drawing, she showed emotion. She showed me the action for praying. She pointed to her family, and she showed her heart. This moment involved no connectivity. It involved no technology. It involved no auto-translation tool. But this young girl reminded me that in an era of high-tech communications, we might be forgetting the most important, the most transcendent things of all. Are we talking about family and faith and feeling? Are we talking about those things which maybe don't have the most reach in terms of social media, but have the most relevance in terms of our humanity? Are we talking about those things on our tools? Are we embracing a conversation where we can share them? Or are we shying away from them to only talk about the shiny things? A little girl in Bangalore has reminded me that in this era of high tech, we as communicators have a responsibility to think about these things, to talk about them, or else they won't be part of our modern culture. Where we've been, how we look beyond what's happening, and how we feel, that is the palette that communicators can be using. And what's at stake is huge. The health of our planet is at stake. We live in an era, an exciting era, where the nations of the world have come together. The United Nations has come together, and we're all working toward global goals. We have goals that lead us to a 2030 where if we can follow and find the right targets, and if we can really pursue these paths that are innovative, that involve technology, that involve people coming together, we can live on a planet that is healthier, where there is not poverty, where there's opportunity for girls and women to go to school, where there's opportunity for people to be born in a healthy environment, where we can have access to water and sanitation, where people can live together peacefully. That's a lot at stake for you, communicator. That's a lot at stake for you, the person who in your hand has a powerful tool of communication. You have social profiles, you have mobile phones, you have internet connections, you have the ability to drive those conversations. It's time for us as communicators to be excited and energized by the technology around us. And as digital age communicators, we need to look back. We need to look beyond. We need to make connections about what's happening today. We need to embrace the cultural patrimony that's around us and share it. We need to look inside of us and talk about feelings, talk about our family, talk in respectful ways about our faith. we as communicators, we as people who embrace communications as a tool for change, we should be talking not just about platforms, but about pluralism, about the fact that we can come together and not just tolerate differences among us, but embrace them for the betterment of mankind. We, after all, are the ones who can have an impact on culture. This is about not just better connectivity, but we as communications professionals and people have the chance to be making a better livelihood for all. Thank you.